G'day, I'm Patrick from Douglas Fir Design. Welcome to the workshop. Today I need to put some ventilation slots in the back of this large record unit that I've been building. There's so many ways I could do this, but I'm using the shaper today. I need a whole bunch of really neat linear slots that allow airflow for the amplifiers and other pieces of equipment that generate heat. And I'm going to show you how I laid them out and got them all cut, and they look excellent. The first thing I did was jump onto the Shaper Studio, which is their in-house design program that allows you to make simple shapes and put them onto a workpiece. I use it on my computer. You could actually do a design this simple on the machine itself. I'm just really comfortable using the computer. I laid out a series of slots that are 80mm long and 7mm wide, and they have a spacing of 8mm. And lay them all out in a grid like this. It's a pretty simple program, both in terms of very simple to use. Also, you're not doing super complex designs on it, but it allows you to set all of the cutting paths for these slots. So you are going to place the router bit on the inside of that line. You can set the cutting depth for all of them universally. So I'm using a little tiny 3mm router bit, little spiral bit, cutting at 8mm depth, and then it just runs around that oval shape to create these slots. In order to then transfer that work I've done on the computer to the actual workpiece, there's a couple of things. First of all, you just upload that design onto the shaper itself, which is dead simple. Then you've got to figure out a way to make sure that that design is sitting in exactly the right location on your workpiece. I just did this by laying out some tape which had a XY axis, a vertical axis, and some dots on there which allowed me to place the reference points on that design, which again, really straightforward, onto that straight line axis and a center point onto the actual workpiece. I did that just with blue tape and a little white picker marker, and the shaper was able to see those markings on that tape and allow me to place that design straight down onto it. Whenever you're cutting out a shape that actually has a piece that will be removed, so in this case, these slots are really narrow, but there's still about a 1mm strip down the center which will just fall out. You stick the entire piece of work down with double-sided tape, and that means that that little piece that's being removed doesn't just rattle around and cause inaccuracies with the router bit. Shaper has this tape. You could use any double-sided tape. This stuff's good because it's actually not too sticky, so it's kind of easy to remove afterwards, which is handy. And then obviously you need to lay your shaper tape field across your workpiece. I am fairly generous with this. It means that it stays nice and accurate. There's plenty of ways you could use less tape. A classic one is if your design fits within the space envelope, you could use the shaper plate, which is essentially a tape field. I've also created a simple tape field out of plywood that I've used on a few projects. I mean, this is just 12mm ply. You could easily create a giant one that you reused over and over again. There's a bit of fiddling around with that, but you don't necessarily have to reuse a bunch of tape every project. So far for me, the ease of just applying tape to a project compared to the cost of it means I just use tape when I need to use tape. It might be a different situation for you, depending on what kind of work you're doing and the size of the pieces and how often you're doing it. Once you've laid that shaper tape all over your workpiece, you just get the machine, the shaper, to scan all of that tape. And then it will also scan any reference marks that you've made on your workpiece at the same time. That new scan has all of the information that you need to then import your design and place it onto your workpiece. It takes a little bit of, just getting used to, like any new machine. But once you're in the flow of it, it's a really simple process and fairly intuitive. And then all you've got to do is do the cuts. Make sure you input all of the correct parameters, the size of the bit you're using, the depth of cut you want to use. But I found it super useful for work like this. Obviously there's like plenty of other ways I could do simple slots like this. I could create a little router jig, or, well, I mean, that would just be the way I'd do it. But this is quick, it's really accurate. You could, if you wanted to be fancy, even create little squiggly slots, or your ventilation holes could be a word cut out of the plywood. I kept this pretty classic, so I didn't put any funky business in like that, but the Shaper has the capability to do it. It's really just limited by your imagination. Okay, if I wanted to scan this piece, I've already taken the tape off because I've finished this work, but just to demonstrate, you go to new scan, start scan, and it is just reading the material that's in front of it and registering those little dominoes. And like I said, it's also reading whatever else is on the workpiece. So in this case, it's reading these slots, and I could then, place work in reference to those slots. I feel like I'm really just scratching the surface of the capabilities of the Shaper. So far I've done this, a few other bits and pieces, cut out some little decorative legs for a piece. But between the Shaper plate and the Shaper workstation, you can use this to do all kinds of fancy mortise and tenons, which I'm really excited about because that is the kind of work that I do. But so far I just haven't had a chance to do that with it. But there are so many jobs when I come across a moment where I was like, oh, that'd be incredibly easy to do on the Shaper and faster than the other way that I might have done it. And the more you use it, the faster you get at it. It's just an incredibly useful tool that is just wildly versatile. Nothing else quite comes close to the variety of things that this can do in a workshop. And like any skilled woodworker can do any of these jobs some other way. Generally, it would just be slower, and I think this opens up a lot of really technical detail that perhaps a less experienced woodworker might not be capable of doing by hand. And that's a really nice feature that, opens up more options for your creative ideas. We'll be doing a lot more on the Shaper as I have uses for it in my work and as we want to do more demos on the units. Put a comment down below if there's a specific job that you'd like to see done with this. I'd love to hear what you guys would like to use one for. Thanks for joining me. There are some links below to products I've used, including the Shaper obviously. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.